Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast, brought to you by Trulytics, the one and only comprehensive advisor transition management platform, and also the most comprehensive and complete benchmarking solution for registered investment advisors and independent financial advisors alike. So make sure you check it out. Go to trulytics.com, check out what your business looks like compared to others in its peer group, or check out riabase.com as well. That's a free and open tool that you can use to see your own firm and others in its peer group and see how everything's stacking up across a whole host of benchmarks. So really interesting stuff. Also interesting, my guest this week, Tony Stich, the Chief Operating Officer of Advicent NaviPlan. And chances are, if you are a financial advisor or at a wealth management firm, you have heard of NaviPlan because over 140,000 financial advisors have NaviPlan on their desktop. So that's quite a footprint. We cover a ton of ground, starting like in the OG territory of the financial planning world, way back in the 60s and evolving into today and what we see for the future. So strap yourself in for this one. Make sure you have a beverage. This conversation is fantastic. Tony and I are getting along famously, and I think you're going to really enjoy this episode of the show. As always, make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you like, get your podcast jam on, and give us a like and a share on the socials as well. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you like to hang out with colleagues and friends. Let them know you're hearing some good stuff here. Also really cool, this is the first episode of the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast that we've recorded in video. So you can see the full episode of the show on YouTube, on the Trulytics website, in the accompanying show notes for this post as well, because the solution we use to record this podcast, called Zencastr, recently released video recording as well. So we're using the beta version of that. We're invited to participate in that program. So really excited about it. You get to see the behind the scenes office studio, whatever you want to call it, for the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast, aka the office in my house. You'll see my Millennium Falcon print. You'll see the lights, you'll see the microphone and all that kind of cool stuff. You already know what it looked like, but you get to see Tony as well. He's in the Advicent NaviPlan offices there and rocking a really cool NaviPlan hat. So, maybe you can get yourself some NaviPlan swag. So, check it out. It's really, really cool. So head on over to YouTube or trulytics.com and go over to the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast thing. You'll see the episode there in the show notes. Okay. All right. Let's get to it with Tony Stich of Advicent NaviPlan. Tony, fantastic to finally get you on the show. I know we had to do a little bit of work. We had some calendar gymnastics. We had a little bit of construction at your house that we had to avoid construction noise, which all of us who are working from home can truly appreciate that there's some racket going on in the house sometimes. So thank you very much for joining me on the show. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
I'm super excited to be here, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be great. And for the listeners, we won't bore you with this too much, but Tony and I have bonded pretty strongly over our passion for Star Wars here. And so I promised Matt not to work in any Star Wars references and talk too much about it. For those of you who are seeing the video, however, over my right-hand shoulder, you'll see my custom print of the Millennium Falcon back there. So my love of Star Wars goes way, way back.
Love it. Love it. I don't have any here, but I got some lightsabers in the office.
There you go. Yeah. You're not afraid to use them. Lightsabers, I'm not afraid to use them. So watch your step, right? Exactly. Well, I thought a fun place to start off this conversation, because I heard you mention at one point in time, and it might have been in another podcast or in a video, that you're working for like a 40-year-old startup, right? And the way that you see things. And I thought it might be helpful to kind of jump in the time machine, maybe keeping with our sci-fi theme here, to kind of look at the history of Advicent NaviPlan, and the software product, and maybe the industry as well, because I think that's sometimes informative of like, where are we going in the industry? How do we get here?
Sure.
But to kind of think about the industry. So NaviPlan started in the 1990s, right? This is before the dawn of the web.
Yeah, no, actually, no. Let's take it a step back. Actually,
oh, even further back.
Yeah, no, even further back to 1969. So we actually, whoa. I know, believe it or not, we are a startup that celebrates our kind of birthday back in 1969. So we just celebrated a Jubilee year. Now, believe it or not, Gus Hanch, he's classified as kind of the godfather of financial planning. He kind of created financial profiles. the concept of a planning tool that became a software. So, and we still actually own and have customers on financial profiles. But yeah, then fast forward to the 90s when really NaviPlan came to be. And then together, it was like Coke and Pepsi when financial profiles and NaviPlan kind of came together. And now here we are today. We joke around about that startup mentality because, like you said, 50 years, right? How can you be a startup company? But we continue to iterate and evolve. And the cool part, though, is that when you have such a decorated history, it shows that we have a lot of roots and understanding of how the advice continuum has kind of changed over time. And really, that's how we actually created the concept of the three waves of the three waves of financial planning, because we have that history behind us, and really how it's changed the way advisors and clients are interacting with financial advice since the 60s all the way through today.
I find it fascinating, and I've talked about this concept on this show a lot, right? That the financial advisory business, or the financial advisor as you know it, is a relatively new career, right? When you compare it to other careers, in that, for when I first got in the industry, and I joined the industry in the early to mid 90s there, right? My first job was 1994, answering phones for mutual fund companies. A lot of advisors back then were still called stockbrokers,
Sure.
right? They were still much in a broker framework, if you will. But it's something like NaviPlan that helped evolve that industry, right? And without a solution, a financial planning solution, they would still be stockbrokers, or they'd be trying to figure out other ways of doing it. How much of the evolution of that of the industry and of the product has been pulled from the demand of the advisors and maybe the clients, or do you think it's more of a push scenario? And I guess we can cover both. Maybe there's elements of both.
Sure. I mean, that's a question that takes some time to unpack. And I think maybe it's helpful to kind of define those three waves of financial planning to kind of
let's do that.
Understand how this industry has evolved. So, let's just start with the 90s with NaviPlan. So it was developed with a cash flow first mentality, right? The true understanding of the inflows and outflows of cash and how that impacts someone's financial future. And by doing that, right, you could truly paint a proper picture of goals and aspirations and how the inflows and outflows of cash can impact that. The challenge was back in the 90s with cash flow based financial planning was that it was laborious and time consuming. And what I mean by that is, think about in the 90s, there was no account aggregation functionality. There's no digital experience. So it was really a lot of meetings, a lot of understanding the cash impacts, and then developing a plan. So what this did was it ultimately forced the advisors, right, to shift and only focus on the high net worth and ultra high net worth space. They had to do this because they didn't have enough time to service the larger public, right? And so as advice kind of continued to evolve, and we started to see the value of financial planning and how it related to purchasing equities, right, or being a stockbroker, quote unquote, we saw this shift into the 2000s or so with the second wave of financial planning, which was this concept of goals-based financial planning, right? It was not understanding the cash flow, but truly understanding what the client or prospect desired with their life financially. And so it started to shift in that direction, which was good because it was the beginning of the democratization of wealth management. But the problem was goals-based planning was simplistic, right? It was kind of like we applied that same model to everyone, and we didn't really understand the cash impacts and whether or not someone could actually afford a goal. It was just more or less defining that goal, right? And that was in the 2000s. So now we're in that third wave of financial planning, which is the best of both breeds. It's an amalgamation of both cash flow-based and goals-based planning. And we've been able to do that because of the digitization of advice, right? Account aggregation tools, the client portal, electronic fact finding has allowed the advisor to do a lot less work around understanding that cash flow, which allows them to provide advice to more people. The cool part is, and Kid Season, I talk about this all the time, is that, everyone's plan should be very, very unique. In fact, we are living in this modern era that's never been seen before, right? So I joke around the wash, rinse, and repeat strategy. So back when advice was 20 years ago, it was really much just wash, rinse, and repeat, right? You have children, they go to college, you save for them, and you retire, right? You maybe own a home in that time, you have some goals, and that's it. It was very cut and dry. But if you
Right.
look at today's modern society, you look at single family households, you look at the cost of college is ballooning, you look at your parents moving back in with you while your college age children are living in with you.
Oh God,
Advice,
let's hope that doesn't happen, by the way.
it's gonna just be ready, right? Make sure the plan's accounting for that. And that's the unique part about today, is that advice is very, very different, right? Because you have to account for all of, long-term care. You have to account for all that with your parents moving with you or whatever. So that's why this third wave is so spectacular, is because it combines that cash flow and goals-based concept. It provides advice digitally. It allows the client to be much more engaged with the plan, which makes them feel more comfortable with you as an advisor, but also more comfortable with their financial freedom.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing that you bring up. The fact that the world is different now for the end client, right? In ways that you and I, when we were getting our careers started, weren't thinking of, right? So I remember when I was in college, one of my professors said to me, you can expect to change careers like maybe 4 or 5 times. And when they meant change careers, they probably meant changing jobs, if you will. But the reality is people change a lot more than that now. I
Right.
mean, look at us now where, I'm in a home office. So many people are either forced into solopreneurship, working as a contractor. Many industries are getting off of 1099, W-2 and going to the 1099 workforce.
Yep.
So financial planning for somebody who doesn't have access to a 401k is suddenly different, right? So life has changed dramatically. The way people earn money, what they can expect for the longevity of their career. Like many people are like, if you can work from home and work at your own pace, why do I have to think about 65 as this arbitrary number where I'm going to shut it down, right? So it's really interesting that you mentioned that. One of the things that I imagine is happening with you and the team at the company is because you're able to see so many financial advisors, so many firms, and have seen the experience of so many of their clients, you're able to kind of rise above the tree line, if you will, and kind of have a vision of like what's going on, where are the trends, and so forth. How does that work on your end? How do you spot these types of trends like this, and then work to incorporate them and get them down into the advisor population?
Wow, another great question, which we could have our own podcast on,
Yeah.
because I want to start with this. The change in our industry is rapid. It's never been as fast as it's moving, and it's when you really think about we talked about at the end of 2019, which feels like 10 years ago. We talked about this decade of disruption. What happened in the last 10 years, from 2010 to 2019, was ridiculous when you really look back at it. From the
Yeah.
fiduciary standards, from now the new DOL rule, Reg BI, the robo-advisor, these digital platforms, the true like acceleration of account aggregation and just digital platforms, it is rapidly changing. And what's even more crazy or crazier is the fact that clients are desiring much more because everything around them is changing the way they expect to interact with everything, right? Everything should be quick, easy, digital, on demand, right? So this is this evolving change. So, back to your question about like, how do we see above the trees? And that's why I like to brag about our 50-year history, because we've seen it all before. And being a global company too, that allows us to kind of see what's happening in Europe and other markets, because oftentimes that comes back to us. So I remember writing an article for Bob's Guide in London a few years ago about how what we found in the U.S. is that oftentimes regulation in Europe and even in the ANZ or Australia, New Zealand area, those regulations slowly move to the U.S. over time, right? Give it a couple of years, they tighten it up, and then when the U.S. sees, okay, this makes sense, we're going to take that on. And we see that often, where just you name the regulation. Retail distribution review in Great Britain is a great example, something that we ended up seeing in the fiduciary standards a few years ago. And then you look at the U.S. and the European and other markets look at the U.S. for the digital transformations, and then they apply those into their countries. So it's this really cool across the pond shift, which
Yeah.
allows us to see that in advance, right? But then we actually leverage data. And so we actually we'll be publishing a report soon because we took the last 6 months or 7 months of planning activity, to understand how COVID-19 and this pandemic has impacted advice. And just a few quick tidbits of what we've seen, which I thought was really fascinating. We compared year over year, we compared country by country, but we saw a really fascinating shift in the first half of this year. We saw a lot less new clients being added into the application. So we saw a lot less new financial plans being created, which means less clients are actually joining an advisor. And now you might say, okay, well, anecdotally, I don't see that, but that's what we're seeing at a very large level with 140,000 users of data. So we're seeing that. And then what we did see, which was really fascinating, is we've seen never before the amount of modifications to a plan in those 6 months. So what we saw is advisors and home offices modifying and updating a plan more than ever before, which indicated to us two things. One, clients that had advisors says, hey, wow, we weren't ready for this. Let's be ready for this the next time. And two, it was a great way of seeing the client go to the advisor and be like, am I okay? And the advisor had the chance then to kind of revise the plan, update it, and say, don't worry, you're okay, or let's get you back on track. Now, what we believe is going to happen in the next 6 months or so is a rapid onboarding of new clients. So we think that fast follow will be now all these prospects are going to become clients because they don't want to get caught in that same situation. They don't want to get caught in a place where we don't have the emergency savings funds or are not ready. And so we think that's the next shift. So this first shift with COVID pandemic was we need updated and revised plans more appropriate based on the situation in which we find ourselves. And the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to see a lot more onboarding of new clients. But back to your point about remote work and different ways of a career, that's really kind of exciting too, because it's changing the way the advisor and the client are interacting, right? Yeah. Gone are the days of boardroom meetings with 86-page PDFs of printed up of the financial plan. We're going to start seeing this exciting new way of interacting with a plan. We believe, and we're working towards, a true client collaboration with the advisor, more so than ever before. You think about a client portal, and it's almost unidirectional. It's kind of one directional. The advisor pushes something to the portal, and the client kind of consumes it. Maybe they call, they comment on something, but I think it's still unidirectional. We're moving to a space where it's going to be very much bi-directional. So the advisor and the client will be interacting with the same technology. They'll be over WebEx, over Zoom. It can still be, of course, in the boardroom at the kitchen table, but we're seeing a shift in how people want to interact with advice. And I'll end with this. We're going to see the financial plan as it is today, this episodic nature of the plan, gone. I believe within a year from now, plans will be living and breathing, constantly updating based on the client and the advisor working together in a very collaborative mindset to make sure we're continually on that right path. That means introducing tasks and requirements, almost assignments for both the advisor and the client, to really keep everyone on track. And then having that digital manifestation of the plan be that kind of that end state and goal that we're always striving for. So I think as much as COVID-19, this pandemic has been terrible on this country and on the world, we're going to see a shift in how we provide advice. And I think that's all going to be for the better.
I think you're spot on both of the things that we're in what you were just talking about. I mean, number one, the shock event, right? Like this is a shock event, COVID-19, where it does a couple of things. Number one, it shocks the markets, right? And so people think about their finances differently, right? And we saw that back in the 2008 financial crisis. People suddenly were like, whoa, or like, I've got to rethink about this. I've got to talk to my advisor. I've got to think about how do I adjust things going forward. The other shock event is that this is like you said, it's transforming the way that people live and think about their future, not only from a health perspective, but I know myself now, I've been working from home for years, and so does my wife. It's working out fine for our family dynamic. But one of the things that really shined a light on, and we're happy here in Austin, Texas, but is like, listen, we literally can live anywhere we want to
Sure.
live. So if we start daydreaming a little bit about living near the beach or the mountains or the whatever, that's not like something we have to think about that maybe someday when we retire. It may be a scenario when the kids are out of high school or whatever that is, make that move earlier in life. And so from a financial planning perspective, talking to your advisor going, hey, that move,
Yes.
that's happening soon,
Yes.
right? During career, not late career. And kind of building on what you were saying, from a tech perspective and a relationship with the advisor perspective, you don't need to leave your advisor to make that happen. Like, whereas before, if you moved from Austin, Texas to San Diego, California, because you wanted to be near the beach and surf, right? You're probably changing advisors. Right? You just were, right?
Right.
It just, you needed to have that person. Don't need to anymore. We've got Zoom. We've got all these other opportunities. But the thing that I really like you said there at the end is that it's going to be a collaborative thing going forward. And I think you're right. I think you're 100% right. Clients are more comfortable with that because they have their phone with them at all times.
Right.
They have the ability to click yes, to move it a little dial, like, oh, what if I save a little bit more? What if I save a little bit less? What if I spend more in retirement or stay a little longer in this house? So whatever that thing is, I really think that's a smart thought process that you guys are going through right now, because I think you're right.
It's bigger than that though too, Mike. So, with NaviPlan, right? So we can model if you relocate or acquire a second home or whatever, we can model very accurately the tax ramifications of that move. But to your point, like, I think the industry should aspire to the level where before Mike decides to move his family from Austin, Texas to, say, California, you are talking to your advisor and you're saying, hey, we're thinking about moving now. And what will that do for our finances? What will those impacts be? Because there obviously are significant tax impacts if you move from, say, Texas to California. Not to pick on California, but but that's the North Star for Advicent, is that the advisor is the epicenter of all those decisions, because flexibility is now more than ever before. And you don't have to leave your advisor, which is so exciting. Because if I want to up and move my family to Wyoming, I would talk to my advisor first and say, this is what we're thinking. What's your reaction? And you're coming along for the ride, virtually at the very least. And so that's exciting. I think that's highly plausible. And I think that individuals are really understanding that our mobility financially and just in general is so much more exacerbated by COVID and by the ability to remote work and do what you want when you want. So it's an exciting time. And it goes back to my point about the rapid evolution of our industry. Like a couple of years ago, this wasn't even on our radar. 7 months ago, this was on our radar. But now we're talking about the remote work ability, how that impacts your financial plan. Can you retire earlier if you move to Idaho versus staying in tech? This is all the exciting parts about the evolution of advice and how the digital effects of that, coupled with like this remote work mentality, where we're moving this industry. It's super exciting.
Yeah, it is super exciting. It not only is it exciting for those clients and the advice that the advisor is able to bestow on them and the engagement they're able to have, but it's exciting for the advisors themselves, right? That the advisors themselves, many of whom now are like, wait a minute, I've been spending $3,000 a month on an office for years.
Sure.
Do I need that office anymore? Can I work from home now and keep that $3,000 or just upgrade it and do studio stuff and all that type of jazz? I was thinking about acquiring another advisor's business, or I was thinking about exiting the business in the next decade. I need a succession partner. Originally, I was thinking they needed to be in my hometown. Maybe not so much. Maybe they can be across the country and I can be looking for that. So that's some really interesting stuff. One of the things I was thinking about in preparing for this episode is that, many of the advisors use NaviPlan, obviously do it because, it allows them to do their stuff faster, better, more efficiently, right?
Mm-hmm.
At Trulytics, producing this podcast, they're looking at this coming wave of advisor transition as their main focus. Is this an area where you and the team are thinking about, like, how does NaviPlan support that, right? So, every advisor operates their business a little bit differently. But technology is likely to play a really big role as we see this first generation of advisors, as we kind of talked about at the early part of this recording. Many of them now are at 60 years old. and they're thinking, I'm on the back nine. Maybe this is the last decade. I saw some study, I think it was a Cerulli study, that said 40% of advisors are planning on exiting the business within the next decade or something like that. Not sure if that's 100% true, but even if it's 20%, it's a large number. What role do you see Advicent and NaviPlan playing in assisting in transition?
Yeah, no. So Trulicks is on the right. They're onto something here, right? And we all know what's happening. 40% is a staggering number. If there's only about, that's significant because we don't have, quite frankly, the advisor bench to fill that 40% vacancy. And so, geez, I can unpack this one too, Mike.
Let's rip.
Yeah. Back to your comment about getting rid of the office, the mahogany desk, right? Investing in technology is the best way to prepare for that succession planning, right? For two reasons. One, because if you have everything digitally powered by a client portal and a planning tool, passing those keys off to the next generation advisor is easier, but it's more appealing, right? So the modern advisor, the advisors graduating from colleges across the country, and the ones that want to leave a firm, right, and want to start their own practice, they're tech first, right?
Right.
And quite frankly, the studies show that advisors are looking at joining firms, and they're looking at the technology first. They're not looking at the mahogany conference room table or the office, right? They're looking at what's your tech stack look like? What investments have you made to make my job easier? Because quite frankly, two things from your point, 40% of advisors are leaving. How can we service all of those clients? You can only do that with technology. There's no way you have enough hours in the day to traditionally service those clients. You need to be able to provide advice digitally in a collaborative format and expeditiously, right? Very quickly, because you need to serve more clients and make them all happy. So these advisors that are kind of thinking about succession planning, they need to look at their technology stack. And quite frankly, if they don't have one, or if they're not ready for one, they need to bring on younger advisors or paraplanners that are going to be champions of technology, that they're going to look at and understand the technology and how it would help your business. Let them build out that tech stack. Let them become champions. Let them go to those conferences and the industry events. Let them understand that and truly become that brand ambassador, right? So what we do, because we're a technology company, but we also offer a great deal of practice management around that. And we suggest strongly that you have someone in your office, if you have a larger office or a smaller one, you have one individual or two individuals that are true champions of the technology. They know it in and out. They're certified in it. They feel comfortable in it, because that's the way to transition a practice very easily. Because you're making yourself much more attractive as a book of business to be acquired or to kind of pass on. And B, you have younger advisors that are technologically savvy that have built out the impressive tech stack, right? And so that's what we're encouraging. I think Trulicks is probably seeing that too, is that, I don't want to buy a book of business where it's all paperwork and I can't do ACATs, the transfers. What a disaster. Like, technology is so critical. And that's why NaviPlan is building out that new way of digital advice, because that's going to allow an advisor to kind of transition that practice much more seamlessly to the next generation of users.
You are, I love it. You're so spot on the number one, recruiting younger advisors, which you're going to need to do for transition, right? In succession planning, they want to be tech forward 100%. And I wrote a blog post about that not too long ago. So I'm 100% in agreement with that. And that is a question, like on the Trulytics, True Performance input forums, tech stack is a big deal, right? It's part of the thing they're asking. Like, because if you're acquiring a business, let's just say you're coming in a traditional M&A deal, I need to know how easy it's going to be able to digest your business and integrate it into mine, right? So if you're not using NaviPlan as an example, what are you using, and how easy is it going to be for me to take that and move it into my business because I'm using NaviPlan as an example, right? So really, really important stuff to focus on tech now. And your other point that you made about efficiency in the business, it's 100% true. Like, not only do we not have enough advisors, to your point, to backfill the exiting wave of advisors, but more importantly, or just as important, we've seen pricing compression, right, in this industry. So we've seen prices come down a bit. And what that means is either you're going to have to service more assets so get larger assets by getting bigger clients, or you have to service more clients and do it more efficiently, right? Or you
Yep.
have to add other solutions, right? Other service offerings or whatever. But you have to fill in that revenue gap somewhere, somehow. Most likely it's going to be through scale. And if it's going to be through scale, technology is going to be there to help, right? It has to.
No, all great points. It's funny when you talk about fee compression. We've talked about a few times that financial planning, that the cost of financial planning is the last bastion of monetization, right? Because
Yeah.
you're seeing these AUM models, which I'm fully supportive, but you're seeing that compression exist, and you need to find ways to monetize your practice. And the financial advisor, this profession, I love working in this industry is because it's so noble. It truly is a noble profession, because our goal as financial advisors is to help people make their ways through life financially, and to do it with as little impact as possible, and make them retire good. And so when you think about technology, and if you truly are noble, you want to democratize wealth management. You want to provide advice to more people, even those that might appear at first to be unprofitable. And technology is the way to do that. Technology is a way to provide advice at different levels, right, of engagement with the advisor to more people. Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of talk about with COVID-19, the influx of new clients that might not be profitable clients. There's the industry is finally focusing on diversity, right, and how we should be diversifying both our advisor population, but also our client population. Technology is the answer to all of those issues. It is the easiest answer to all those issues. And NaviPlan, in particular, has a great way to do that, to transfer that over, to attract more clients, more diverse clients, attract more advisors, more diverse advisors, and truly not only impact your practice, but impact the industry and the investor population. And that's, again, a North Star, but technology, especially NaviPlan, is the way to do that.
I love it. I love it. You talked about NaviPlan, being such an integral part because you're on an incredibly large. I don't know what the exact market share is, but then you mentioned 140,000 advisors' desktops, right? So
Yep.
that you're on a lot of desktops out there, and so as a result, you become a central hub, if you will,
Yeah.
for many advisors' daily lives. One of the things that I found so uh, refreshingly exciting, I guess, I'm not sure what the right adjective there is, but you have an API or a series of
Yeah.
APIs.
Oh, yeah.
And, I personally think that APIs are one of the most important innovations that have happened to the tech industry at large over the last 20 years, right? That for the longest time, technology products were just like they're closed boxes, right?
Yep.
Walled garden, you use a solution for this, you close it down, you use this other solution for this. There might be a thing to export and then import a flat file or something of that nature. But you look at all the things that we take for granted now, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, Microsoft, all of them offer a robust set of APIs so that either really cool developers who are looking to build new solutions can leverage that tech, by consuming things that come out of it or pushing things into it.
Sure.
Or the client, right? The end user can say, you know what, this is great, but I need to customize it a little bit for my use case. I wonder if you might share some interesting use cases you've seen for the APIs so far. Is there anything that you're like, oh, wow, that was really cool that somebody built?
Yeah. So the APIs, we underwent a technological transformation 2 or 3 years ago with the introduction of a new client portal. And then most recently, the guided retirement tool we have available in NaviPlan. And everything now we build going forward, we're releasing new technology at the end of this year and early next year. It's all built atop of APIs. And yeah, it's funny. This is one of them. I don't really like this idiom, but we're eating our own dog food, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're building everything on APIs and then building a user experience based on those APIs. And we can sell it to an enterprise firm or an RIA or whoever, and you can say out of the box, you can take it just the way it is. And we are the most configurable. I mean, you bring up, we have 140,000 advisors on our platform in North America. We have about 80 enterprise firms that use and trust NaviPlan's calculation engine. But there's a high level of configuration that they require to, if you have an insurance broker dealer in Canada versus a large RIA in the US, they have very different needs. So our technology is very configurable, but APIs have changed that because now we can take pieces of the technology and kind of manifest themselves wherever we want in a digital ecosystem. And this is really, really cool because this allows an enterprise firm to kind of tell their own story, if you will, digitally by using the APIs where they want. We've had some great customers. Janney Montgomery Scott's a fantastic customer of ours on the Eastern Seaboard, and they built, with our APIs, they built their own client portal experience to truly integrate deeply within their digital ecosystem. And so that's the way they're powering it. They're just taking bits and pieces of the APIs. It's running against that consistent calculation of NaviPlan and allowing the advisor and the client to do much more. But what we're seeing now with this API shift, which is exciting and kind of cool, is these larger firms are building their own tools and building their own functionality all together. But what's really exciting is that API can be built within a self-directed planning tool. It can be built within an advisor workstation. It can be built within a banking portal. So all of that consistent data comes in and out of NaviPlan. So that calculation always remains constant, which is great. You want to have that data consistency, but the branding and the elements of the APIs, Mike, just to be clear, like we have, our APIs, they're not just bi-directional, right? So you talk about data coming and going, right? We can take client data or prospect data into the engine and calculate or compute something from the advisor workstation. We're doing that, but it's far more complex than that with our APIs. You can build out any one of our, how we develop a chart, with an API. You can build it out any way you want. So it can render as a bar chart. It can render as a pie chart. It can render any colors, topography, names. You can set and change the dates. It's so configurable at the API level that these developers are absolutely in love with it. When we talk to these larger banks and they're starting to build stuff, they're like, wow, like you guys take care of the calculations, we take care of the rest. And we believe that's the shift we're going to see, especially at the enterprise level, is that out of the box functionality is gone, right? If you white label a tool, how fun is that? Everyone's got the same result. So now with APIs, you're able to build stuff. And finally, because our APIs are built in this particular way, any firm can use them, right? The barrier to entry is very low now. APIs used to be, I needed 200 developers, I needed to be a large bank, and I had to build it myself. Now it's so flexible that these smaller firms, these mid-market banks, these smaller RAs can use our APIs and build it themselves. So it's really shifting the way technology is kind of manifesting itself within these ecosystems, and APIs are the way of the future. I mean,
I love it.
The technology we're rolling out next year, the way it's built with the APIs, it can be driven by the client, the advisor, the home office. You could build a robo tool. You could build a self-directed planning tool. You could build an analytics engine based on the planning data so that you can feed into your data lakes. I mean, it's just, totally changing the way people are interacting with our technology and the calculation engine that is NaviPlan.
That's awesome. Is it, I didn't see on the website, is it something that's available also for like third-party solutions, such as, I'll use Truelytics, obviously. So if Truelytics is like, hey, we could use NaviPlan in our solution, or we could have some of the things that we have in our solution appear in a client's NaviPlan presence. Is that something you're working with as well, third-party?
Yeah, so great question. So the long and short of it is yes. We have conversations every day with firms that are kind of thinking outside the box. Workplace solutions, so retirement solutions. We have firms that are thinking differently about how to provide insurance, or you name it, and even P&C. I mean, like stuff way outside of the normal, you'd think advice scope. And we're talking to these firms about using those APIs and building within their tools and white labeling it, cross-selling it, partner channel strategies. That's all happening, which is really exciting too, because it really unlocked almost a blue ocean for us in terms of like what can be done with these APIs. So we're having those conversations, and there's some exciting stuff that's unfolding. In fact, I anticipate within the next 6 months, you're going to see some really different firms using the NaviPlan APIs to manifest advice. Because at the end of the day, you talk about NaviPlan with 25 or 30 years of calculation history, right? You can't replicate that. You can't, millions of lines of code. You can't just be like, I'm going to provide advice. I'm going to provide financial planning. I'm just going to build it myself. No. These firms that are smart, they're saying, let NaviPlan worry about the tough stuff, the tax calculations, the estate planning, the calculation engine as a whole. Let's just build a front end, call into that engine, get that result, and use that. So that's the shift, and it's a really cool shift. So yeah, these partnerships, these different kind of these new customers we're looking at. It's really exciting because it's really unlocking a totally different market for us. And again, it goes back to that mission of democratizing advice, because more people are going to be interacting with advice. We're getting to the point now with, we have partnerships with Ivante. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They do healthcare data, so they can actually look at large population, Census Bureau data, government data. They use AI to kind of understand when health events are going to occur and what that'll mean for your retirement. And so by using that data, we can now truly change the way people are looking at advice. What's more exciting for me, though, is when you look at those unprofitable clients, quote unquote, what we just want to do is start to provide them little information like peer-to-peer results, right? Like people like you, right? People in their 30s, people are saving for their first home. Where are they in terms of retirement? Where are they in terms of savings or their net worth? Just those small nuggets are going to help people move toward that full advice model. And these APIs are allowing us to do that. The Guided Retirement API is a great example. So our Guided Retirement API, we built that. We rolled it out at Invest last year. It was a huge deal. It was all APIs. We took one data point. That's your income. And based on your income, we can model out extremely accurately how much money you're going to need in retirement based on the 3 phases. And I joke around about them, but I love these phases. There's better names for them, but it's go-go, slow-go, and no-go, right? The first 10 or 15 years of retirement, you're go-go, right? You're retiring at Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville. You're golfing every day. You're going out to eat, at the local Denny's or whatever. And then, as you change your age, your costs shift. More to healthcare, less to leisure, more to living, right? Long-term care. And so guided retirement with that one data point, because if you're, for instance, if you're making $200,000 a year at the age of 55, based on that data point, we have a ton of analytics. We have some big machine learning, big data. We have Ivante with their AI. You can actually say, based on your financial profile today, this is what you'll need in retirement. And it's really fascinating because it takes one data point, 2 seconds to provide a true retirement spending paradigm. And those are all APIs. And so as you look at workplace retirement solutions, as you work at insurance broker technologies, you're going to start seeing that manifest itself in there, because one more hint to what do you need, peer comparisons. It's just the next shift in how advice is being democratized. It's really exciting.
It is really exciting. It's really cool. I love it. It's just so amazing to think about, how the ecosystem grows and how interactive things are right now. We only got another minute or so, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I had this one question that I really like asking lots of guests, and it's, what surprised you the most? So you recently just celebrated your 5-year anniversary with Advicent NaviPlan. You have been the chief operating officer for 3 years. Also, recently just had the anniversary of that. So congratulations on both.
Thank you.
What are some things that have surprised you over that time since you've been at the firm?
Sure.
What did you see coming? That could be a good thing, a bad thing, or just a curveball.
Yeah, no, it's funny because I think of all the regulations I've seen in 5 years, right? I've seen the shift to digital. What surprised me most? I'm going to be completely honest with you.
Sure.
I do a few trade shows a year. I'm on the road. I interact with a lot of individuals at the largest banks in the world. I interact with some of the biggest RIAs. I have friends everywhere. I have some very good friends in this industry that I'll be friends with for life. They're fintech companies. They're these large firms. What surprised me most is that regardless of where you work, if you're at a large bank or you're at you're Brian at Redtail or you're Cheryl Penny at REA or whoever you are, even your competitors, what surprised me most is everyone is swimming toward the same destiny. We're all going to the same place. And that mission is the same. It's trying to make everyone's life better financially, regardless. Obviously we're in this to make money, right? We're in this, we're all selling something, right? But the biggest shock was at the end of the day, the goal remains the same. It's a very noble goal. It's a very important goal, especially in light of the pandemic, right? It just goes to show you how critical, how important it is to help people make their ways through their lives financially. And we're all doing that same thing. I've sat down I sat down at a hotel lobby bar at their conference, with Brian at Redtail or Aaron at Riskalyze or Cheryl, whoever, and we shoot the shit, or whatever that is, but we all have that same mission: democratizing wealth management, helping people make their ways through life financially, and that's fantastic. I mean, I love it, and that's why this industry is so attractive. But so that's what surprised me most, is that our missions are very much aligned, very much the same, which is, I absolutely love it.
I love it. It goes back to what you said. It is a noble industry at its heart, right?
It really is.
That's fantastic. Well, Tony, I really appreciate you taking the time out today and working with us, like I said, through the challenges of calendar gymnastics and so forth. It's been fantastic. But I really enjoyed, I think, the friendship we started, and obviously the conversation today. So this is really great. I'll make sure that everybody gets their opportunity to connect with you. Tony's very active on LinkedIn and Twitter and other social networks, so you can find him there. And we'll get all of this stuff published up on the interwebs soon. So thanks again, Tony. Appreciate it.
Super excited. Thanks again for having me. This was a lot of fun. I'll do 10 more if you want, because this was really enjoyable. Really appreciate it.
Sign you up. Yeah, we'll do a lot more. This is fantastic. Yeah, flowed like water, as they say.
Yes,
fantastic.
Yes. Thanks,
All
Mike.
Right, thanks, sir. Bye. All right. Huge thanks to you for joining us for this Modern Financial Advisor podcast episode. It's always fantastic to have you. And it kind of feels really neat to have you with us on video as well for the first time. That's a cool experience. I know I can't see you, but I always feel like I can. When I record something in video, I kind of look at the camera and feel like maybe I'm talking to you. So if you happen to watch us over on YouTube or the Truelytics website, in the show notes there, where the video is embedded, that's really cool. Great to have you. Massively huge thanks to Tony Stich for joining me today. It was fantastic to have him. I really feel like he and I are getting to know each other, and I think that came through in the episode. Great chat with him. Such a smart dude, so engaging as well. Really loved having him on the show. As always, please do keep your questions and suggestions for guests and topics coming in. It's always great to hear from you. It seems like every week we get a couple of people reaching out and saying, hey, so-and-so would be great for the show. I'd like to be on the show. And if that's you, if you think you're relevant for this audience, love to hear from you, right? There's people engaged with the podcast, obviously, and then people who are feeling like they're bringing value for the audience, love to hear from you. Okay, so keep that flowing. It lets us know that the show is working, right? You're getting good stuff out of this, and it's helping you in your business, and it's engaging, entertaining, hopefully a little bit as well. All right. Until next time, make sure you are wearing your masks and keeping your distance. And my favorite, being nice to each other. Okay. We really need everybody to be a little bit nicer to each other. Okay. We will see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. See ya. Bye.